The dim fluorescent light flickered above Emma as she sat beside her mother's hospital bed, clutching her frail hand as if holding on to life itself. The rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor echoed faintly in the sterile room, each sound a reminder of how little time they had left. Her mother, pale and weak, tried to force a smile, but even that seemed to require more strength than her body could offer. Emma blinked away tears as the doctor entered, his face heavy with quiet sympathy. "Emma," he said gently, "your mother's condition has worsened. The infection has reached her heart. Without surgery, she might not make it through the week." The room seemed to spin. Emma's throat tightened. Surgery. The word echoed like a distant thunder she couldn't escape. She gripped the armrest of her chair, trying to steady herself. How much will it cost?" she asked, though she already feared the answer. The doctor sighed. "Over $100,000. I'm sorry, I know this is difficult." Difficult. It was impossible. Emma felt the walls closing in. She was 17. She didn't have savings, relatives, or any help. She worked part-time washing dishes at a diner, barely earning enough for groceries and the small apartment she and her mother rented. There was no lifeline, no miracle waiting for them. Just silence. Just time slipping away. Her mother squeezed her hand weakly. "Honey," she whispered, struggling for breath, "don't worry about me. You've already done so much." Emma shook her head furiously, tears finally escaping down her cheeks. "No, Mom, I'm not giving up. I won't let you go." The doctor gave them a moment alone. Emma stared at the window, watching as the last rays of the setting sun painted the sky in shades of orange and gold. She thought of how her mother used to sing to her when she was little, humming lullabies that made the world feel safe. Her mother's voice had been the light of her life. Now, it was Emma's turn to be that light. Just then, a nurse walked in, chatting excitedly with another staff member about a local television talent show. "First place wins $100,000. The nurse said cheerfully. "Imagine that, just for singing." Emma froze. It felt as if the universe had whispered to her. She turned slowly, her heart pounding. $100,000. Singing. It was the only thing Emma truly had, her voice. A gift inherited from a mother who once dreamed of being a singer before life demanded sacrifice. Emma stood up suddenly, her eyes blazing with determination. She leaned over and gently kissed her mother's forehead. "Mom," she whispered, her voice trembling yet full of resolve, "I'm going to save you. I don't know how, but I promise, I will." Her mother opened her eyes, tired but full of love. "Emma, what are you going to do?" Emma straightened her shoulders, a spark of courage igniting within her. "I'm going to sing." In that moment, fear transformed into purpose. She wasn't just a poor girl facing the impossible, she was a daughter on a mission. And nothing in the world was going to stop her. The grand auditorium buzzed with excitement as people from all walks of life poured into their seats, their faces glowing with anticipation. The annual Voices of Tomorrow talent show was the most prestigious event in the city, and tonight, the stakes were higher than ever. Not only was the top prize an astonishing $100,000, but the show would be broadcast across the nation, turning unknown singers into overnight stars. For most contestants, it was a dream opportunity. For Emma, it was a lifeline. Backstage, Emma clutched the contestant badge pinned to her dress. She had only one worn-out outfit to her name, her faded blue dress that had been mended more times than she could count. But none of that mattered. She closed her eyes, inhaling deeply, whispering to herself, "This is for Mom." Her hands trembled slightly, but her heart knew its purpose. On the main stage, the announcer's deep voice boomed through the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome our esteemed panel of judges." The heavy curtains parted to reveal three renowned figures seated behind the judges' table. The audience erupted in applause. But as the lights focused on the man in the center, the applause grew to a roaring crescendo. Daniel Gray, a billionaire entrepreneur, philanthropist, media icon, known for transforming struggling companies into empires and changing lives through charity, yet also feared for his icy, emotionless exterior. He was a man who seemed carved from marble, never smiling, never softened by sentiment. Tonight, he was the chief judge. Emma recognized him instantly. Everyone did. His face appeared in magazines, on news reports, on billboards. She had seen his picture often, always associated with words like influential and untouchable. But Emma had never paid attention to his personal life. She had no idea that the man sitting under the spotlight was the father she had never met. Daniel sat silently, his sharp gaze scanning the stage as the announcer introduced him. Though the crowd cheered his name, he remained still, his expression unreadable. But beneath that composed exterior, Daniel harbored a buried ache. Many years ago, in a youthful moment of fear and selfishness, he had walked away from a woman he loved, not knowing she was carrying his child. He spent years searching for purpose, burying himself in wealth and success to quiet an old guilt that never stopped echoing. Tonight, as he picked up his pen to score the contestants, he had no idea fate was about to place his past in front of him. Backstage, Emma peeked between the curtains. Her heart nearly stopped when her eyes landed on Daniel Gray. The Daniel Gray. She swallowed nervously. If anyone could change her life, it was him. But he was also known for being brutally honest. Contestants had walked off this stage in tears after his criticism. But Emma didn't fear his judgment, she feared failing her mother. Daniel sat forward slightly, as the host announced, next contestant, Emma Carter. Her name echoed through the hall. Daniel's eyes twitched. Carter. A familiar sting touched his heart. He wasn't sure why, but something about that name made him pause. Emma stepped onto the stage, bathed in light, unaware that the man before her was more than a judge, he was blood. Yet fate had already begun its work. A hush fell over the packed auditorium as Emma stepped onto the stage. The spotlight bathed her in a soft golden glow, making her appear fragile yet angelic, like a lone star in a vast night sky. She stood there for a moment, frozen, one hand nervously gripping the microphone. Her knees trembled slightly beneath her faded blue dress. She could feel hundreds of eyes on her, judging, measuring, expecting. From the judge's table, Daniel Gray sat still, his pen poised above the scoring sheet. His expression remained stoic, but something about the young girl's presence tugged at his memory. There was a gentleness in her eyes, a familiar shape in her face, echoes of someone he once knew, long ago. But he pushed the thought aside. Focus on the music, he reminded himself. At that very moment, Emma's mind flashed to the image of her mother lying in the hospital bed, struggling to breathe. The weight of desperation sat heavily on her chest. She wasn't here to chase fame. She was fighting for her mother's life. And in that realization, something inside her shifted, from fear to purpose. The soft piano introduction began. Emma closed her eyes and took a deep breath. When she opened them, a single tear slipped down her cheek, not of weakness but of love. Then she began to sing. Her voice emerged like a whisper carried by the wind, soft, trembling, but filled with raw emotion. It was unlike any practiced performance. Each note carried a heartbeat, each breath a prayer. The lyrics told the story of a little girl growing up without a father, watching her mother struggle alone, and longing for a day when she would be able to say, "We made it, Mom. You don't have to be strong alone anymore." As she sang the chorus, her voice swelled with power she never knew she had. "If my voice is all I have, then I'll give it all away. To bring back the smile you lost along the way. You held me through the storm, now let me be your light. I'll sing us out of darkness, I'll fight with all my might." The audience was silent, not because they were unimpressed, but because they were captivated. People leaned forward in their seats, breathless, some with tears forming in their eyes. The cynicism that often filled talent shows melted away in the presence of something real, something pure. Daniel Gray slowly lowered his pen. His eyes widened, his heart pounding in a way he hadn't felt in decades. The lyrics were piercing his soul. Every line felt like it was written for him, as if the girl on stage was speaking directly to his buried regrets. Memories flooded him. A young woman's laughter, the letter he never answered, the goodbye he never gave. He tried to steady his breathing, but emotion surged like a tidal wave. Emma reached the final verse, her voice cracking with emotion. "To the father I never met, if you hear me tonight. Know this voice is not broken, this heart still shines bright. Even in your silence, I learned how to stand. But I still wish you'd been there, to hold my hand." A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Emma finished on a haunting, lingering note. Silence followed. Then, in a wave like thunder, the audience rose to their feet, applauding, cheering, crying. But Emma couldn't hear any of it. She stood still, shoulders heaving, tears falling freely, not from fear, but from the release of everything held inside. Daniel Gray sat in stunned silence, his mask shattered. The truth had begun to reveal itself, and nothing would ever be the same again. Backstage, the noise of the cheering crowd still echoed faintly through the curtains, but Emma couldn't hear any of it. Her knees gave way, and she slid onto a wooden bench, her hands trembling uncontrollably. She had poured her soul into that song, laid bare her deepest wounds in front of strangers. Her heart raced, partly from emotion, partly from fear. Did I do enough? Will it be enough to save Mom? A soft knock on the backstage door broke through her spiral of thoughts. Before she could answer, the door opened, and in stepped Daniel Gray. Emma's breath caught. Why was he here? The man who was feared even by celebrities, the cold billionaire who rarely spoke more than a few words on television, why was he standing in front of her? Daniel approached slowly, almost as if he were approaching a fragile memory rather than a person. His composed, emotionless persona had vanished. There was something raw in his eyes. Pain, regret, hope. I need to ask you something, he said, his voice unsteady. Emma stood, wiping her tears quickly, trying to compose herself. Did I do something wrong? She asked nervously. Daniel shook his head. His throat tightened as he searched her face, every line, every expression tugging at memories he had buried deep. Your mother, he said softly, what is her name? Emma hesitated. The question felt strange, heavy with meaning. But she answered anyway. Her name is Isabella Carter. Time stopped. Daniel staggered back slightly, as if struck by an invisible force. His hand flew to his mouth. His eyes glistened. Isabella, he whispered. The name left his lips like a sacred confession. Emma frowned. You know my mother. Daniel closed his eyes, gathering what little strength he had left. When he opened them, Emma saw it, the unmistakable truth in them. He stepped closer, voice trembling. Emma, I know this will be hard to believe. He paused, his voice cracking for the first time in decades. But, I am your father. The room fell into silence so deep, it felt like the world had stopped spinning. Emma stared at him, her mind refusing to accept the words. Father. The father who had abandoned them. The man who never sent a letter, never showed up for a single birthday, never cared whether they lived or died. This was him. Her chest felt like it was collapsing. Anger surged through her veins. She stepped back. No, she whispered. No, my father left us. You left my mom when she needed you most. You left me before I was even born. Tears streamed down Daniel's face, tears he had held in for years. Emma, I didn't know about you. I made mistakes. I was afraid. I was a coward. But finding out today, hearing you sing, feeling something I've never felt before, I knew. I knew somewhere in my soul that you were mine. Emma shook her head, overwhelmed. Every part of her wanted to scream, to run, but deep within, a small, fragile part of her wanted to believe him. Daniel took a step closer, voice breaking. Your mother, she's in the hospital, isn't she? She's dying. Emma's eyes widened. How do you? Daniel gently placed a hand over his heart. Because I once loved her. And I never stopped. For the first time in 17 years, Emma saw not the billionaire, but a father. Not perfect, not heroic, but real, and broken. Tears blurred her vision as she whispered, if you're telling the truth, then do something. Help her. Daniel nodded, eyes full of a vow that came from his soul. I will. Starting now. I promise you, Emma, I am here. And I am never leaving again. In that moment, the past didn't disappear, but a new future had just begun. Morning sunlight filtered softly through the hospital window, casting a warm glow over the quiet room. The rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor was steady now, not frantic, not fading, just calm and strong. Emma stood frozen at the door, tears welling in her eyes as she watched doctors and nurses move gently around her mother's bed. Her mother was in surgery, life-saving surgery, already in progress. Just hours earlier, they had been told she wouldn't survive the week. Now, the impossible was happening. Emma slowly turned her head to the man standing beside her. Daniel Gray, her father, was silently speaking to the surgeon, signing documents with decisive movements. Even in his composed business-like manner, there was a tremor in his hand, a raw urgency in his eyes. He hadn't slept. He hadn't left the hospital since Emma told him the truth. He had mobilized a team of the country's best surgeons within an hour. Money, influence, power, things he once thought defined him, were finally being used for the most meaningful reason of his life, to save the family he had lost. Emma approached the glass window overlooking the operating room. Her hands pressed against it gently, as if she could reach through to her mother. Memories flooded her mother singing her lullabies, holding her through nights of hunger, smiling even when her eyes were filled with pain. And now, for the first time, Emma wasn't alone in her fight. A soft voice broke her thoughts. "She's strong," Daniel whispered, stepping beside her. "Just like you." Emma didn't respond. Her emotions were too tangled: relief, disbelief, hope, and a fear she was almost afraid to release. Finally, she looked up at him, her voice quiet but steady. "I don't know how to feel about you." Daniel nodded slowly. "You don't have to," he said. "Not today. I didn't come expecting forgiveness. I came because I can't change the past, but I will give everything I have to change your future." Tears slipped from Emma's eyes. Not the tears of a broken girl this time, but of someone who for the first time felt the weight she had carried alone slowly lifting. Hours passed. Finally, the doors opened, and the lead surgeon stepped out. "The operation was successful," he announced with a relieved smile. "She's going to make it." Emma let out a cry of joy, collapsing to her knees as Daniel caught her in his arms. She didn't resist. For the first time in her life, she allowed someone to hold her up when she could no longer stand on her own. Later that evening, when her mother was moved to recovery, Emma sat beside her, holding her hand. Her mother's eyelids fluttered open, and when she saw Daniel standing at the foot of the bed, tears filled her eyes. "Daniel," she whispered. He stepped forward, voice shaking. "I'm here, Isabella. And I'm not leaving this time." Emma watched as her mother reached out, placing her hand over his. No words were needed. The silence between them was filled with forgiveness, healing, and recognition of a love that had never truly died. Days later, Emma was invited back to the talent show stage, not as a contestant but as a guest of honor. She stood beneath the lights once more, microphone in hand, but this time her heart was light, her spirit unburdened. She no longer sang out of desperation. She sang out of gratitude. Her voice soared, no longer a cry for help, but a song of hope, rebirth, and the miracle of family rediscovered. As she reached the final note, the audience rose to their feet in thunderous applause. Some people dream of changing their lives with money or fame. But Emma discovered something far more powerful: the healing power of love, forgiveness, and second chances. And in that moment, bathed in light and love, she knew. This was not the end of her story. This was only the beginning.